Welcome back.
A show
Kent
I've never
is
seen.
here. You've never seen Welcome Back, Cotter?
Not a single episode, which I
Uh,
don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to use that same line when talking about Empire.
well, I don't think it needs to be necessarily about Empire. That guy just happened to focus on that show. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in what he said. And I was like, wow,
There
okay.
was.
Dude is
There was.
right.
He was a
But
very interesting person.
yeah, he's a little weird. I mean, he's got some other videos out there as well that are very just kind of, whoop, this guy's crazy.
Why,
But at the same time,
why does it seem why does it seem that those type of videos, for whatever reason, are always shot in the car?
I don't know. I think that's when people have alone
There's
time.
another couple of people I've. There's this one guy, and who appears to be in roughly the same mental state. White guy, beard, maybe backwards baseball cap. He's sitting in the passenger seat and going on similarly about any number of things, but always in the car and always
That's
shot
that's where you can be
as if
alone
we
with
don't
your
know how to use
crazy.
the phone. I know.
That's where you.
That must be.
It's the only quiet space you can be alone with your particular brand of crazy. So,
Don't listen to him.
oh, oh my goodness. Ooh, that was a hiccup. Where's Kara? I think Kara decided not to be on this podcast. We didn't mention on the last one. We didn't even mention the
Is she on that?
no, the religious
Give
side
her
of
a minute
things.
to.
Yeah. So we didn't even mention the religious side of things, which I think is an integral part of it too. Because I'm like, geez, these religions say things that are fundamentally different from each other. Like,
I thought of that when I was watching the video, and I'm ashamed I didn't think of it earlier. And it's like, I think one of the lines in the video was like, "Love has no religion," and it's like,
yeah.
yeah, it totally does, because it affects how you, and it's not because you're going to hell and the other guy's not going to hell, or they, whatever. It's that when you have completely different. My religion is what gives me my outlook on life.
Actually, hold on. I'm gonna edit this in because
Okay.
I'm actually already recording. I want to edit this part into the last podcast. I'll work it in somewhere. But so I'll just start off here. Another thing that I noticed about this video, again, the whole love has no religion thing, that was really strange to me, because I mean that sounds nice. We live in this ecumenical culture, and can't we all just get along, and we are the world, and Michael Jackson, everybody gathers together and sings all these songs from all these different music genres. So all religions should be the same too, right? We should all be able to just get on the same page. Why can't Muslims, Jews, and Christians all worship together? Why aren't they all worshiping the same God? And it's like, it's all just the same God with different parts of the elephant, right? I'm like, wait a minute, no. Love, not all religions are the same, and that's another thing that the video I think was pushing. And I'm going, no, these religions are fundamentally different. That's why they are different religions. It's like, and so I think people have this. We live in this skeptical age where people think, oh, we have different religions, but nobody has it all right. We're all wrong in some way, shape, or form.
But every religion is claiming to have it right.
Right, but every religion is claiming to have it right. And so the love has no religion thing really just kind of stuck out to me, in that it's pushing that same love again. Sameness. Love means sameness. Acceptance means sameness. Christians, Jews, and Muslims are all essentially worshiping the same God. Like, wait, hold on. All of these religions teach things that are fundamentally different. Jewish people have no concept of the incarnation. Christians obviously believe in the incarnation, and in order to be a Christian, you need to believe in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Muslims believe God is one, Allah, and there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Jesus is just a prophet in Islam. However, in Christianity, Jesus is God. In Judaism, Jesus is a false prophet, not a God at all, and God is not incarnated and never will, and one day he will save his people through a human person who is not also God. I'm going, wait, these are very, very different ideas about, these are very different religions. They are fundamentally different, and they are not the same thing.
I think what's interesting, though, just to jump in on that, is that the same message that's trying to say, oh, it's all the same, is fundamentally supporting for individualism and to not conform on the other hand. So the idea is that you don't have to be the same, right? So no race, no disability, like all the other ones, okay, love who you want to love, but on the religion, it's but we can be all the same. And I think that that's a really interesting shift that's not highlighted, but it's an underlying message.
I can say, for my part, I can confidently say I would never be able to have a romantic dating or marriage relationship with somebody who didn't share my faith, my Christianity, on a very fundamental level, because it gives me, my religion is what gives me my outlook on life. It's how I interpret the world. It's how I interpret reality. And I can't even imagine. I mean, for those who are saying, you would be unable to love a Jew or a Muslim. It's like, I would be able to respect a Jew or a Muslim, but I would not be able to. I could feel attraction for them, but I don't think I could ever feel love. We could never be compatible.
Well, I think
love in a romantic way, you mean, right?
I think that's where it muddies, like Kara said, the different kinds of love.
So there can, I guess, for clarity, so people are like, this guy's a bigot. You're talking about romantic love, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. Romantic love, dating love, marriage love.
What about you, Kara? Your thoughts on religion and the same of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated. I'm thinking back on the video because you're right. Like they start out with a huge emphasis on romantic love. There's a same-sex couple. There's an older couple. There's an interracial couple. There's a same-sex family with a child. But then they also do throw in like the sisters, one with a disability, and then the two different, I'm not even sure which religions they were, but two different leaders in churches from different religions. I think, yeah, it throws in some confusion, is what I'm saying, because you're like, wait, are we talking about romantic love here? No. Obviously, they're stating there's some kind of a difference here. But I agree with everything that Kent said. That it was my maybe only one prerequisite when I was looking for my husband was that he had to be someone that loved the Lord, because that is everything that I am, and I cannot be married to somebody who does not share that. Like, how could I ever explain someone this giant part of me if they do not feel the same way? But as far as loving people of other religions, of course, because God still made them, and they're still wonderful, and they can still have great qualities. And love is actually what convicts people, I think, about who God is. And so, to withhold your love from anyone is to deny them access to God.
Let me just say that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, and this is ultimately meaningless, but I can't believe that I got to be as old as I am and not know that there was a big gay culture at Disney World.
You really didn't know?
No. I mean, I've heard about gay days for years, and it's a big sore subject, right?
Well,
but no idea.
Lots of rumors around that Walt Disney was gay. No, I don't believe that. He was married and had children, so obviously he had some sort of attraction to women.
His wife was his beard. His wife was his beard. That was the rumor, right?
He got a mustache and a beard.
But it totally changes Toy Story for me. Totally changes Toy Story. Buzz and Woody, that's a totally different kind of relationship than I thought.
Oh dear. It can still be wonderfully innocent and fun and magical.
Speaking of Disney, I shared with Kara the Rock hosted Saturday Night Live the other day, and they've been doing all these live action Disney movies, right? And so they released the next live action Disney movie, and it was The Rock playing Bambi. Oh, so funny. There were 2 videos that they did on Saturday Night Live, or 2 sketches. One of him doing a WWE announcement for WrestleMania that had me in stitches. If you watch 80s wrestling, you have to watch this. But then the Bambi one, it was like Fast and Furious director directing Bambi. It's so funny, so great. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We are now talking about Christians and cultural engagement, or Christians and I guess kind of cultural chaos, so to speak. So I will have played the audio of the video of this guy kind of going crazy, and I'll have to beep out some of the stuff. But so this guy kind of indicts Christians, So you're a Christian. The Bible tells you not to engage in this kind of activity. Not to like things like premarital sex and violence and drugs and talk about those things in music and and so on and so forth. And here's this show Empire, or this show Scandal, or this show insert whatever's on television nowadays for the most part, and the Bible tells you not to like those things. And I don't engage in them, and I'm not even a Christian. That's what he says. I'm not a Christian. I don't watch these things because I don't want to watch bad stuff. I don't want to get that in my spirit. The eye is the window to the soul. I don't agree with the Bible, but I do agree with it on that point at least. And so I don't want to devour that. I don't want to digest that kind of stuff and put that in my system, in my spirit. And here you are, a Christian, who asks, "Are you watching Empire? I didn't think you'd watch Empire. You're such a judgmental person." It's like, wait, no, I'm not a Christian, and your Bible says you shouldn't even be engaging in that kind of stuff. So, what? It's kind of interesting that this guy who's not a believer is calling Christians to account for being, I guess, in a way, hypocritical. And if I'm honest, I love the show Empire. I just watched the season finale and watched every episode of it and downloaded the soundtrack of each episode. Is kind of like Glee, where they release a few songs from that episode, and so they release these songs, and so I've got each one, and the songs are about sex and money and drugs and and same love, because there's a gay guy who's singing, and he's singing about his his love for his for his partner, and so there are all these things that he's right. I feel he's right about. The Bible says I shouldn't like these things, and yet I'm liking these things. And he even quotes Scripture, says, "Woe unto you who call good evil and evil good." And I feel like I'm part of that. I sat back and I was like, this guy, if you watch some of his other videos, he's clearly kind of off his rocker. But a broken clock is right twice a day. And I felt very, very convicted that wow, I'm engaging in this stuff, but not convicted enough to stop. That's the crazy thing. Like, next season, when Empire comes back on, I will be there with popcorn in hand and pop in the other. I will be watching it. But I also can't say that he's wrong. I can't.
Well, I love Empire. I'll jump. Go ahead.
It's all you.
I was just, there's a pause, so I thought, okay, let's talk. I love Empire as well, I have to say, so guilty as charged. But the other shows that he mentioned, I don't think I've actually watched. But
you haven't seen Scandal? No. Oh my gosh!
It's so good.
You're going to hell, at least by his admission, right?
I'm 2 for 2. I am 2 for 2.
No, I'm just teasing, of course. The thing about it is that, okay, as much as you were like, oh, okay, maybe that was the case, I actually kind of didn't like his video at all. And the reason is, I feel like he was very self-righteous and had a lot of indignation. And I do recognize that he is not trying to walk by or claim to have any type of, affiliation with Christianity. But a man what is the saying? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Like, this guy in his own mind has his own religion, and what I think is what didn't sit well with me is the attitude he had with it, and I think that that's a pivotal difference between his own admission of his own code versus Christianity. As much as he wants to throw stones at us, Christianity isn't a religion. He's got a misunderstanding of it. It's not a religion that says you have to live perfect. It's a religion that says, hey, try. The spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. You just got to keep trying harder. And each time you try and you fall, get back up again. The Bible says that a righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. It doesn't say he's not going to do things wrong. In fact, the human condition is very much what the Bible's about. And the human condition is all about failure and sin. And I mean, if you read the Bible, it's the most scandalous book you're going to read. I mean,
yeah, but I think his indictment is that you're not trying. You're actually saying this is a good thing. This is great to watch.
Okay, but to have that type of indignation about it is misunderstanding the Bible itself. The Bible's a word about grace. Now, I'm not saying that that's grace abused, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Paul talks about, just because you're forgiven doesn't mean you just try to sin, right? So, I mean, yes, he's right on that account, but at the same time, I think the actual accusatory sense of it is the very opposite of the Bible. The Bible's not a book of judgment, though God will judge. It's a book of grace, and it's a book of failures. And, maybe, I'm not saying he's wrong.
Right. I think he was judging us, but I would not say that his judgment of the situation is wrong. I would say that his judgment of the situation is calling an ace and a spade a spade. The Bible says this is wrong. You're saying it's good. You're calling evil good. The Bible tells you not to do that. What you're doing is wrong. Whether he's a believer or not, yeah, he's self-righteous. He has no reason to be anything other than self-righteous, because that's all he has is himself to create his own righteousness. And so on that, I can forgive him.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm going, yeah, he's judging us. He's being judgmental because he is. He has no reason not to be, because he's not held to the same standard that Christians are. But his judgment of the situation is, I think, spot on.
I've mentioned this before, but in school I was a communications major with a media focus, so I spent a great deal of time studying different media, watching movies, watching TV shows, listening to CDs, reading books. And what I love about it, and why I just wanted to major in it, is because I felt like it's an art form that's so popular, and it teaches us about humanity. And through that those classes, what we're taught is to watch things critically. So rather than sitting back passively watching a show like Empire, which I haven't seen Empire, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like Scandal and shows that have kind of seedy storylines, but if watching something critically is different than just sitting passively and saying, this is cool, I want to treat people badly, I want to cheat people out of money, I want to be just like them, but rather watching it like you would watch life around you. Somebody's writing about something, they're telling you a story, and you can watch it. This is what I do, and I've always done this. Watch it and see, what can I learn about life through this? What can I learn about God through this? I think everybody definitely has their weaknesses, and I think you should be smart. I think if you're a person who has struggled with drug addiction, maybe it's not a good idea to watch a TV show or movie that glorifies drug addiction. That might not be a healthy thing for you to do, because it might be hard for you to separate the reality from the fiction. If you're a person who's really struggled with adultery, maybe you shouldn't be watching Scandal, because it definitely kind of glorifies the adultery that could be good. So maybe that's something you shouldn't watch for you. And I think if at any point you feel like you're watching things and you're putting bad stuff into your body, into your mind, into your heart, stop watching it without question. Stop watching it. But if you're watching it because it's art, it's a story, you like hearing stories, you know how to separate reality from fiction, I think that's okay. I mean, the Bible is full of, like Jen was saying, the Bible is full of messiness. It's full of prostitution and adultery and murder and all kinds of craziness. It's not that Christians are like, no, I can never see anything that's bad. People are wonderful all the time. But understand these things happen in real life. It's a reflection of reality.
I hear that, and I even just got a book that's about it's from Crossway Publishers. It's called The Stories We Tell, and it's about this exact same thing, cultural engagement and how are we watching things. I read a book years ago, back when Relevant Magazine was printing books. They were doing relevant books, and a book called Movies Saved My Soul, and it was about this kind of cultural engagement question. And I do wonder sometimes, while I hear you, and I try to watch things like that, I would say that there is a vast difference, honestly, between someone watching Saving Private Ryan and someone watching Scandal. When I want to watch Scandal or when I want to watch Empire, I want to shut off my mind. I want my brain to be, and my senses to be titillated. I want to see the girls dancing. I want to hear the song. I want to know what happens next between this really messed up family in this show Empire. I want to know what's going to happen next and how the main character in Scandal, I can't remember her name right now. Kara, what's her name?
Olivia Pope.
Olivia Pope, right? How she's going to get her client out of this given situation that so they don't have to face the consequences of their actions and things like that. How she's going to get out of a situation so she doesn't have to face the consequences of her action. It's mindlessness for me. I'm not sitting there at all when I watch Empire and thinking, now what can I learn of God? What story is God trying to tell me? How am I learning about humanity? When I see these kinds of stories in the Bible, I'm seeing them as descriptive rather than prescriptive. When I see it in the culture at large, again, Saving Private Ryan was descriptive. Schindler's List was descriptive. These are movies about things that happened. This is what happened. How do we deal with them? Those are movies that make you think deeply. The Passion of the Christ, descriptive. Shows like Empire and Scandal are proscriptive. Now, of course, they're not coming out and going, hey, you know what? Go out and have an affair. But it is really kind of pushing the culture where it's like everybody wants Olivia Pope to be with the president, right? It's like, oh my gosh, they have such a well, originally.
Holy rules, come on.
Yeah. Okay,
Sarah,
so
are you
originally,
Team Jake?
first season, everybody wanted her, and it was like, oh, it's so sweet. It was like, wait, this is the president of the United States. He's married to someone else, and we're thinking this is beautiful. And we've touched on this in another podcast before, and so in that sense, it's really driving in the culture kind of some of the stuff that we talked about in the last podcast, where it's like, we seek after our own. That's what our culture wants. And Kara, you said of your own father, he left. And it was kind of, that was his heart's desire, and this is what love is, and I can't help who I love, and so on and so forth. And so when I think about and look at this, I'm going, I feel like sometimes we wrap up our desire to watch this or engage in particular cultural activities in, I'm doing it for the cause of Christ, or I'm trying to learn about God and learn about humanity. But in fact, that's our slickly wrapped up excuse. It's an excuse, I think. And some people do that, of course. Some people do that.
You're right. People do that. And I just said do. Sorry.
You can tell when somebody's the mother of young children by what she finds funny.
Yes.
Okay, go on, Kara. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. What were you talking about?
Can't say something. Kent hasn't even been in this conversation yet.
Okay,
no, I particularly like the part where I said nothing at all. No, I guess. And gee, I had something completely. Oh, okay. Empire, as I alluded to earlier in our pre-tape, I have not seen an episode or even as much as a single minute of Empire, and The reason for this is
because you're white and a racist?
Because I'm white. That's no. Is because honestly, I'm a little turned off. Okay, no. Here's what it is. I was turned off to Empire for largely the same reason I did not like this gentleman's video, and that is, I feel that both Terrence Howard and the guy in the car have broken minds. I think that getting fired from Iron Man 2 broke Terrence Howard as a human being, and every public utterance since then has gone to support that theory, and I can't even comment on what happened in the life of the guy in the car. But as far as Scandal goes, I've seen every episode of Scandal and liked some better than others, and I would not say for a second that I'm doing it, that I watch Scandal in pursuit of godliness. But for thousands of years, people have been sitting around the fire or the living room or the radio or the TV or in the movie theater and telling stories. And the one thing that is required for a satisfying story is conflict. And the one thing that can generate conflict between human beings is sin. It's going to be very hard to tell a story without sin, because sin is what makes for conflict between people. I have one of my best friends who also has seen every episode of Scandal. I have commented to her that Scandal could easily be titled Psychopaths and be absolutely the same show, because while Olivia Pope, Kerry Washington's character, is probably the most decent person on the show because your central character has to be likable, the White House Chief of Staff and at least two of the White House Chief of Staff and at least two of Olivia's employees are flat-out psychopaths. One of them is actually a homicidal psychopath, and it makes for a lot of conflict. These people are good at their jobs. Funny, the person in the show who's probably the worst at his job is the President of the United States, and so it makes for an interesting story. I would never tell anybody that it's making me a better person, except as a lesson in life. This is how not to act. But it's never pushed me to torture anybody.
I mean, I would definitely not say that I'm watching Scandal in pursuit of God. Obviously, there's better ways to do that. I can, look in the Bible to pursue God, perhaps. Perhaps prayer would be a better place to start. But I do believe that God is everywhere, and that's what I'm saying, is that God is everywhere, and God made the writers of the show. God made the actors of the show. He's inside of their interpretations, whether they know it or not. And so, and I'm clearly not sitting taking notes every time I'm entertaining myself. I guess what I'm just saying is that God is in everything, and so just there are absolutely shows I don't watch. Like I said, I can't watch Mad Men. I really tried. I really struggle with deceitful people, and that show just really, I struggle with it. I want to like it because, man, John Hammond's handsome, but it's hard to watch that show. House of Cards is another one. Actors are wonderful, but there's so much deception that, to me, it hurts my heart so much. It's not for me. I can't handle it. Scandal really entertains me. I think it's a really fun show. I think it's crazy, and every week afterwards on Fridays, I'm talking to my girlfriends. We actually have a ladies' prayer group. We just discuss Scandal first, and then we pray usually afterwards. So it's a little strange.
I think that's where this guy's argument has the most credence, because you said Scandal entertains me, and Kent, you said, every great story has to have sin, because that's where conflict comes from, and that's very right. I mean, I was sitting here, I had my microphone on mute, 'cause I don't want you guys to hear me like coughing or anything, but I was sitting here going, yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. But then I get to what Kara just said, Scandal entertains me, and we're entertained by sin. That's what I think this guy gets at. Self-righteous as he was, that's the convicting part for me, is that I am sitting here and enjoying sin. I loved Breaking Bad, the show Breaking Bad. I watched every episode of that. The only episode I ever saw live was the finale. Like, I binged it on Netflix and got to the finale and watched that live. And, while I paint the ending of Breaking Bad, I'm going to ruin the ending here, but at this point people should have watched it. So the main character, Walter White, dies at the end of Breaking Bad. Right? So he's killed, and at the end I remember thinking, this is how sin ends. That's why I loved the ending of that show. It was a perfect end to his sin. And the whole show was a very human story. It's a march of a man starting off kind of idyllic, and then his sin being revealed and becoming more and more and more monstrous as he went through the series. But I say that on the back end, justifying the fact that I was really just entertained every week. I really wanted to see how Walter White was going to get out of this scrap and be able to sell his methamphetamines to people. He was a drug dealer, is what he was, and he was selling the most perfect drug, which was ruining lives. And he was killing people, and so I was just like, I was super, super entertained by it. But on the back end, I'm like, well, it was a human story, and he died, and this is the way that sin ends, and it was great, because I'm glad that it ended that way, because if he had ended and he got away with it, that really wouldn't have been a great ending, and it would just glorified sin. But because he died, it shows the actual end of sin. And I do believe that, but I think it's a nice, sweet message. I can couch it in Christian language to justify the fact that I was, for 5 seasons, entertained by death, murder, sex, and drugs.
I want to tie into what Ken said and kind of the comments that have followed, but my thought is this. I think that his attack was against kind of a very relevant culture and how we entertain now. But what I think is interesting is that this isn't new. So yeah, maybe this show's new, or some these shows are all current, but we're talking about pretty much since the beginning of time. I mean, you look back to any kind of entertainment, even historical, some could argue, records. Look at the myths, look at the fairy tales, look at any good, noteworthy classic of literature. These stories are not clean. Very few of them are, let me put it that way. And while there is some literature that is clean, most of the great stories that people talk about, the ones that, really, you could say, impact even Shakespeare. I mean, nobody thinks today that that's controversial to study Shakespeare, but
Anne of Avonlea.
But like at some point, I'm sure that probably was a little, scandalous for somebody. And I think it's really interesting that he's kind of honed in on just one particular aspect. And I think that that's kind of where this argument kind of falls apart is, and I'm not talking about, the recent craze in like 50 Shades or anything like that, but for centuries and millennia, we've had that kind of, entertainment. We didn't used to have TV, so it was literature, right? Or it was plays or whatever. And I mean, this isn't new. And what I think is also one of the questions that I wanted to pose is, so if this isn't new, then obviously this is just what humans are drawn to, right? So a book doesn't become a classic because nobody read it, right? Obviously, lots of people liked it. So in order to be a classic, it has to have something that draws people in. So this isn't new. Humankind likes this stuff. But what I think, and maybe this is off the topic a little bit, but I kind of like the question of, if the Bible was all peaches and, sugar and spice and everything nice, so to speak, would people really read it? And what I mean by that is, would it relate to people? Would we turn the pages? Is it not also what makes this very story that we base our religion in and our beliefs and our faith in, what makes it accessible?
Yeah, I think it's accessible, but I don't think that the Bible no part of the Bible was ever written where sin is taking place and the description of that sin is meant to excite you. I think that's the main difference.
No.
As much as we're telling these stories and we're being again, going back to we're being entertained by sin in a very real way. We're being entertained by death.
But my point with that is that I think they appeal to us, like the fact that, it shouldn't appeal to us. Okay, the reason it appeals to us is because it appeals to the humanity in us that relates to certain things. We relate to something when somebody fails. We relate to things when people have a struggle or a temptation because we have them too. Maybe not the same one.
Yes, we relate to but Scripture relates, and people try to get away from this. And guys, I want you to comment as well. But Scripture relates in a way that it says, here's a description of sin going on. Here's the judgment of that sin. Here's where sin ended. Sin is always wrong. Sin is always bad. Mm-hmm. Whereas, yes, we are drawn to these stories.
Okay, so the show you just mentioned did the same thing.
Right, it did. But I said that on the back end. While I was drawn in, it was glorifying it all. It was
and
beautiful.
Don't you think that that's what happened with David and Bathsheba in the beginning?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
I think
so
it did.
That's my point.
But most stories don't end that way, though. In television, I would say.
I don't think there was a point, and I watched Breaking Bad a little further back than you did, Calvin, in that I watched season 4 and 5 live, but I binged 1 through 3 in one very sad weekend. No, that's not true. But it was a short period of time, and I don't think there was at any point in the run of the series, I mean, yes, it was exciting, but at no point did I feel that Walter and Skyler's life was being glorified. It always seemed sad to me. It always seemed like a morality play, and I particularly noticed that the character that Walt's brother-in-law, who was a fairly run-of-the-mill DEA agent, who was a short, pudgy guy who was played in the first season for laughs and comic relief, became the hero of the series. Walt was always a bit of an anti-hero, but Agent Schrader, his brother-in-law, was a Sherlock Holmes figure to Walt's Moriarty, and not positive where I was going with that, but yeah. So I don't think Walt's behavior was ever glorified. It was always exciting because there was always it was always exciting because you never knew what was going to happen next, and but I don't think anybody could ever be. I don't think at any point I ever thought this is something to emulate.
Right, and I guess Breaking Bad is probably a worse example than, say, a show like Scandal, because you're right. You're very right. You're very right about Breaking Bad in that it is very much a morality play, and so the end all, the ending of that series, that message is, it really does resonate. It's a morality play. It ends based on morality. It ended the way that it should have, and so I think that you're right there. but I don't think a lot of people are watching it at that level. I don't think people are watching it with that kind of awareness. Same thing with Mad Men. Mad Men is very much a morality play.
But then what about the subconscious? There's something to be said for that as well.
Yeah, but I would differentiate between a show, subconscious or not. I would differentiate between a show like Breaking Bad and a show like Scandal and Empire. Those are very, very mindless, and it is entertaining, and it does push particular agendas and particular views of the world that like a show like Breaking Bad, like you know from, as exciting as it is, like this is bad. This is only going to end badly. It's not good at all. But I think we're being entertained, not just entertained to death, but entertained by death, and that's where I think that this guy is right, and it's difficult for me as a Christian to live with my hypocrisy of it all, and to think, there's all these things that talk about holy living, and I'm not talking about being a legalist. Do this, don't do that. Here's the list of shows you can watch. Here's the list of shows you can't watch. I hesitate to have, one conviction for everybody, right? But I don't take issue with the fact that the Bible calls us to a particular standard of living. And holiness is holiness, and holiness is holiness to everybody. Convictions about certain shows to engage with, might be different for different people, but certain things no Christian should watch. Like, we can all pretty much agree. Let's just not watch porn, right? That we're all on the same page on that one, or at least we should be. Like, there are certain things that Christians know. Okay, that's not holy.
Well, let me take a moment here and stand up for porn. Okay.
Okay. Please.
I was like, wait, what's going to happen?
It's like, wait, where's he going there? I thought he was going to go, well, within marriage, husband and wife, we wanted to do something to spice things up. And whatever. But yeah, I guess we can wind this down. But yeah, I think
I have something else to say.
Say again?
I have something else to say before we wind it down totally.
No, please do.
I just want, not that I want to defend Scandal, it is just my favorite show. And I think I want you to understand, because one, I don't want you to think I'm a terrible person, but also I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. I'm watching Scandal for the happy ending. I do not enjoy Huck's homicidal rampages. I usually cover my eyes when scary things are happening. I definitely cover my eyes whenever Cyrus is making out with some dude, because it's something I don't want to see. I keep watching Scandal because I really want Olivia to have a happy ending, and she is not having one. Her choices have gotten her into a terrible situation, and she is heartbroken all of the time. And I watch it for the glimmers of hope for her, because and I've been very angry when series have ended and not giving me a happy ending before. If Scandal were to end,
you mean like Lost?
Don't get me started. If Scandal were to end,
Jen is watching through Lost right now, so you can't ruin it for her. But yeah,
I will
told her
not.
already.
I would never do that.
I told her it's already a terrible ending. Terrible ending.
No, I actually really like the ending, but again, it was in hindsight. But I'm saying, if Scandal were to end and Olivia were not to have a happy ending, I would be heartbroken and furious. The reason I hated Wolf of Wall Street, because it was kind of advertised to be this guy, he does all these terrible things, but then in the end he realizes he was bad and becomes good. If you watch the movie, it's 2 hours of glorifying this terrible, horrible lifestyle, and then 1 minute he's like, well, no, I give self-help talks, so it's all good. And it's no, clearly you still think that was awesome, all those choices you made. So that movie, I hated it, because it definitely glorified the negative, sinful things. But for me, and maybe I'm alone in this, I don't think I am, I'm watching movies because I want to see things work out for people. And I think a lot of shows do a very good job of showing consequences to bad choices and consequences to sin, even when they're not Christian shows, because people know that when you do these things that hurt people, bad things happen.
I just wanted to put a note in, and I think that was a really good point, but I read this quote recently before I even knew I was going to be on the podcast, actually, and if anybody's ever read the original fairy tales, they were not the Disney version. Okay, they were very grim and dark, and I read the stories and I thought, oh my goodness,
the Grimm brothers,
right? And I remember reading those for the first time in college and thinking, oh my goodness, people read these to their children. Why? Because they weren't good, and they didn't always end well. But they were teaching something, and what I think is really interesting, and I don't even know if I agree with it, but I saw these quotes, and I thought they kind of tied into what we were talking about on the pro side for some of the stuff that sometimes we're like, oh, I don't know if you should see that or not. Like, I don't know if a kid should know the original version of Little Red Riding Hood or Cinderella. But this quote, I have to say, by the person who said it, has some merit. Albert Einstein actually said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. And I read another quote as well by G.K.
Chesterton.
Thank you.
G.K. Chesterton.
It says,
Christian.
fairy tales do not tell children that the dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed. And those are just kind of two, like, food for thought quotes that kind of resonated with me as we were talking about all of this stuff, that I think sometimes, and I do think sometimes what he said had merit, but I think there's sometimes as well that those kind of thoughts can have merit to what appeals to us and why we're drawn into things, and maybe sometimes beyond what we can explain that's going on in our subconscious or our psyche, or helping us maybe work out something that maybe we don't even know is going on, but we can relate to this character, and we don't want to go do what they did, but maybe we can go, oh, you know what, that's how that turned out, and that's not a good idea. So I do think there's some pros to even the scandalous side sometimes that is portrayed in these shows, like it was in the fairy tales, and I think there's some merit to that. Do I think there's also some merit to guarding your heart and your eyes? Absolutely. But I don't know that it's as cut and dry as this guy likes to make it.
Okay. I think we'll end there. We've gone pretty long tonight. Thank you both for giving me your Monday night and hopping on. I think we got some really good content here. So I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Hopefully, Amy will be back. Thank you, Jen, for being on. And
are you going to leave the doo-doo part in?
Say again?
Are you going to leave the doo-doo part in?
Yeah, I'm probably going to. It was just classic.
Kara, I was just going to say, anytime you want to talk about Lost for 3 or 4 hours, now we're Facebook friends. So I would be happy.
Jen is
to go,
almost done.
I like the ending too.
I'm
it's just you.
Season 6, episode 9, guys.
Okay, look here. When Breaking Bad, here's what happened. When Breaking Bad ended, people were still so mad about Lost. They wrote J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof and Colin Hughes and said, "This is how you end a show."
Yeah. Did you read? Damon Lindelof responded back with this really brilliant blog.
Yeah, he did. He's like, "Look." Yeah, basically it was a long soliloquy of let it go. I moved on to bigger and better things.
Let it go, but also I was right. Which I agree.
She hasn't gotten to it yet. Maybe I'll be the... You know what? Maybe we should do like a retrospective on Lost because she's about to finish it. Maybe we should do a podcast episode of like years...
A couple years ago, I mentioned doing a Lost thing, and you were like, "No, that's so old. Nobody cares." So it's like still not over. Really good.
That's what you should do.
Maybe we should do an episode called like Happy Endings and Bad Endings, and talk about shows that had great endings and whatever. So we can go from there. Something a little bit more fun and lighthearted. But anyway, thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you guys obviously every day on Facebook. But I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
I'll talk to you every day.
Every day. Right.
Bye.
Hey, look up that Bambi video. Look up the Bambi video for sure. Peace.